All right, let's do it live on a Tuesday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. You okay? You get some things sorted out over there?
Getting some chords together. Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm great. Right. The sun is out. I wish it was. I wish this is what we were going to get on Thursday. This is what we would be able to show the world.
I haven't looked
on a Thursday night, but I'm afraid.
What's the dark skies showing?
We're not going to be showing this to the world. We're not. But that's okay. I'm ready for the draft. I'm with you, Beau. We were talking before the show. I'm with you. I'm ready. Let's pick already. Let's get the picks.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Let's see what happens. Time for speculation is over.
What?
Let's see what happens.
It's been a long time since I've seen a 99% chance.
I like that they're holding out hope, though. I like that they're holding out hope. It was 100% earlier in the week, so you could say.
So they've dropped.
You could say we're trending in the right direction.
Oh my gosh!
You could say that.
Just a nice light rain all day. That's where you're headed.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Before we get into all this stuff, real quick, I want to say something. This is again a personal thing,
Please,
but I want to get it out there. So
sure.
I don't know if you're aware that the WWE Network is no more, and now it's a part of Peacock, the Peacock streaming service.
Wait, hold on. So I wasn't aware of this. So the WWE Network, and you and I have discussed this at times about potentially where to start the boys.
Yeah.
I've decided Bootsy's still too young, so I'm going to give him another year, and then I'll start. And I can really start Evergreen at any point in the WWE universe.
Yep.
And they won't know any different. So anyway, so this is no more? That network
So the
is
WWE
gone.
Network, right. Peacock, and what ended up being a great deal for the WWE, bought the rights to it. So now the WWE Network lives in Peacock.
Okay.
And you pay an extra for the Peacock Plus is what they call it. That's how you get, which is $7 or whatever it is a month. I mean, it's a great deal.
They all start there, and then you get a notification. Now it'll be $9.99.
Well, that's going to happen. Sure. Yeah, of course.
Like that just happened with Disney over the weekend. They just hit me.
Of course,
a little bit more.
They lure you in, and then they say, now we're going to give you the exact same services that we were giving you.
They have. Here's the one thing, though, I will say, they have better deliver original programming.
Correct.
Because it can't just be the library. It's got to be original programming. So you better make sure you've got something to keep me.
WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Right. That stuff. Yeah.
Mandalorian.
And I'm not watching that stuff.
Oh, it's good.
But I've heard good things.
It's very good. So anyway, WWE Network's now on Peacock. So I would recommend it's now you're getting all of that, their library. They are doing original shows on it, as you would demand. And you're getting WWE, which is putting original programming on it as well. So anyway, the point I'm making is on Sunday, and I just got a chance to watch it last night. On Sunday, they debuted a new documentary on The Miz. And obviously, he's a great personal friend of mine. But it was just really well done. And I know this is a Cleveland audience, and I know we have a worldwide audience as well. We are the World's Team. You're welcome.
Yeah. World's Team.
But it was just it was a great thing highlighting what just a great guy he was, his journey, which is crazy, the things that he went through to get where he is, the hard work, and just that's what struck me at the end. When I talked to him last night, I just said, you have the respect of your peers. I mean, when he won the title the second time, every big name in the business was like, you deserve it. You're the hardest working guy in this business. And it was just really cool. And I think people who, don't know much about him would really enjoy it. And those who do know about him would enjoy it even more because it was great. It's an hour and 15 minutes, and it's great. It was great.
Couple of questions. Who produced it?
The WWE.
WWE produced it.
Yep. So
he has I don't know. He's been awesome when we've had him in. I know he's a great friend of yours, and I loved when we did the thing slinging the refrigerators.
Oh yeah.
All of those things. But before I even knew him, and I only know him through you when you have him in. It's not like I know him, but just in terms of when I've seen him. From the outside looking in, I would have thought, because obviously, like most people, the first time I saw him was on The Real World, and he was this crazy dude who was trying to launch something that seemed impossible. It seemed impossible. Like, that didn't happen at that time, to think, oh, yeah, I'm just going to be a professional wrestler. Now, this is in my mind's eye. I don't know how close this is reality, but that's how it seems to me. So what I'd be curious about is, once it happens that that is going to be the case, and you want to pursue this, I would imagine that my hunch would be there'd be some tremendous backlash from guys who went about it in a more traditional way. Did he have any of that? Did he have people saying, wait a second, you can't start on third base? You start on third base because you're on some reality show? Like, that had to be hard for him. and I don't know the story. I'm interested in the doc. I want to see it. But I would bet that had to be very, very difficult. And I'm sorry if it's naive, but I haven't followed this quite that way.
In fact, it's a wonderful, very insightful question. And so it goes into that. In fact, they have the real world Boonham and Murray or whatever. Those people are interviewed in this talking about why they picked him. And so the reason he kind of created that Miz persona on the show is because nobody liked him. He's like, I went there. I'm a kid from Park.
No, he was a heel for sure.
They did not like me.
But not on purpose. Like they
he just was. And
right.
then he kind of invented the Miz character, and he was like, these people seem to like the Miz more than they liked me. So I just was the Miz, and it started to be a kick. So he actually went from there and trained and went to wrestling schools and came up the way anybody else would. But because he was on the Real World, there was tremendous backlash. And he went through Tough Enough, which was the WWE's reality show, to get a contract. Tremendous backlash. There were some really mean things that happened to him behind the scenes, which they get into without getting into the real specifics of, but just some not cool stuff happened. And he overcame all of it and now is one of the most successful people, in the business. And so it's a very cool story. The best is, one thing I'll share, which is just classic his dad. So his dad is featured throughout the program as one of the main people that not main people, but one of the people that they talk to. They're a bunch of wrestlers. They talk to a writer, etc. And his dad, Mike tells the story of when he came home from school and he got bad grades. He just wasn't into it and got bad grades. And he brings home his report card, and his dad, George Mizanin, just looks at it, shrugs, crumples it up, and throws it in the trash. And Mike's like, "You're not going to yell at me? You're not going to, be mad at me?" And he goes, "No, you're dumb. You're dumb. It's fine. You're just not going to amount to anything. You're dumb." And so that pissed Mike off, and he got straight A's after that. But the amazing thing is you go through this whole documentary, and George, with the ultimate closer in the credits, is like, "Yeah, he's great and all, but I like the guys who could do all the flips and the floops and this, that, and he just can't do any of that."
Can't do that.
Just
crazy.
Hilarious. But it really was
that's good.
Really good. So I recommend everybody check that out.
That is awesome. That is a good job. That is a good job.
No pun intended.
Good job out of them, and I will check that. Yeah. There you go. All right, let's get into the OBM Hot Topics. Ohio Business Street preferred copier provider, your Cleveland Browns, all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. Oh boy, it has been crazy, and we didn't talk about this yesterday. This Caleb Farley thing we'll get to in a second, courtesy of the Ross Tucker via Rap Sheet and Pillis, all this stuff about Caleb Farley and his injury history, which is enormous red flags. I mean, this is, to me, when you talk about back multiple times, like I would be fearful of that if I were an NFL team. But this stuff is all getting put out there, and I do feel very bad for these kids. And we didn't talk about this yesterday because there was so much else going on, but Justin Fields, since we last did a show, the epilepsy thing came out of NFL circles, and he was telling NFL teams that was leaked out by an NFL team that Fields suffered from epilepsy. And he hadn't had a seizure in a long time, never had one at Ohio State, wasn't an issue at Ohio State. His doctors believe he'll outgrow it, but somehow that was leaked out,
which is not cool.
Is awful.
I mean,
that's
illegal.
Awful. I would think it would be, but I don't understand. I don't know who's holding anyone accountable. Like, I don't remember who did the original reporting, but, like, how do you track down who leaked that to him to get it out? But it was just, I hate this stuff, man. I hate it. And I hate it what it does to these kids, and I can't imagine, and I'll just use Fields just because he's somebody I'm familiar with, and he has been the lightning rod of this entire process for 3 months. He did an interview. It's like basically the Gruden, they used to do Gruden quarterback camp with Gruden or whatever.
Yep.
So he did like QB 21 with Herb Street, and I caught his one with Herb Street. Now that is as friendly fire an interview as you're going to have. Is Kirk Herbstreit interviewing Justin Fields? That's as friendly fire as it's going to get.
Yep.
And Justin was so guarded and so short with his answers, and I thought, look what's happened to him. He's not even comfortable anymore because of what you've done to him for 3 months.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And that's
awful.
That's why I wish this was faster. I almost feel like it should be a faster process. There's too much time to tear people down, and that's what it becomes, much more than a propping of people up. The only person that I would say I'd go through this draft that I haven't heard anything negative about outside of, and you even hear people talk about Lawrence now, Kyle Pitts is the only person that so far, in my estimation, this draft has been beyond reproach. Like I haven't heard one.
Zach Wilson.
And I don't hear
Zach
anything
Wilson.
about him.
Nothing.
He's just going to the Jets.
He's going to. There's no conversation about it. We don't. I have no idea. How many people have actually seen him play? That's irrelevant. No, he's going to the Jets. It's a sure thing. Difference between him and the next three, 1,000 miles. It's a Grand Canyon. He's a made man. Really?
Yeah.
Really? Are we sure?
I don't know. We'll find out, I guess.
You're right. And Pitt is the other one. And there hasn't been much with Chase either. That's mostly been largely positive, those skill guys. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's a bad. You just see what it does to these kids, man. I mean, and they're men. I mean, they're over 18. I guess they're men, but it's still a lot. And this Caleb Farley stuff that came out yesterday, and it just details the amount of surgery. So it's quite more complicated than you were led to believe originally on Caleb Farley.
Yeah. Do you want me to read what the report is here?
Well, there's an original surgery.
Okay.
He opts out.
Yep.
He opts out of the season, and then there's another one.
And he did it deadlifting.
Yeah.
The first injury came deadlifting. Opts out. By the way, he also tore an ACL back in 2017, which I didn't even know about. I just knew about the back stuff.
No, I didn't know that either. Yeah.
So then he comes back, and he irritated it, leading to a second microdissectomy. Still has weakness in one of his big toes, suggesting a nerve hasn't fully recovered since the latest procedure, but that's normal, which is ongoing. So I see that, and I'm like, all right, he's off my board. He's off. That's it. I'm not. I
agree, but now do you think that that's the idea? That somebody wants him to fall?
Well, you had that, and then did you see the other things that have come out from Charles Robinson? Per Charles Robinson.
No, I've not seen this.
The Saints might move up to get him, and the Saints feel they might need to move ahead of the Titans to get it done. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's a good player. He'd be a good value for the Titans at 22, probably off the board in the top 6 or 7 picks, if not for the back injury. An important add here, Charles says Saints have been leaky in recent years, and a lot of their pre-draft info on their leanings has been accurate. And so what he says is that the Saints covet him and are contemplating a move up in front of the Tennessee Titans to make it happen because they think the Titans will absolutely take him. Now, another interesting note, and this comes from the great Cleve TA, the Saints do not have a single cornerback under contract for the year 2022 on their roster.
That's not great.
So that's a team that is likely to be looking to buttress their ranks there. So could the Saints be a team that wants this out there about Farley? But the way that this stuff that comes out, it's in, again, all of this stuff, I feel like it's always calculated, and this sounds like it's coming out to scare somebody off. And I know one of our next Hot Topics is one of my takeaways from the interview with Daniel Jeremiah, our OBM Hot Topics. And I'll share this. This is what he told me this story yesterday. And I think it's relatable to Caleb Farley. He was a scout with the Ravens at the time that Gronk came out.
Okay.
The Ravens had Gronk as a top 15 player on their board overall.
Okay.
They wanted him bad. Doctors gave him a thumbs down, undraftable, off the board. Patriots obviously took a gamble in the second round, and he's now arguably the greatest tight end that's ever played the game. So it's going to come down to thumbs up, thumbs down from your medical team. And he said this is going to be in a year where there are going to be more divergent medical opinions than ever before because it's not done in the combine way.
Oh, for sure.
So that's what you have to weigh. It could be that he never plays. It could also be that he's easily the best corner in this draft. My thinking is better teams have the luxury of taking those risks. And if you're the Browns and you can roll out what you've got right now, I feel like we can take that risk. But at the same time, do you want to add another potentially injured corner when your biggest concern about your cornerback room is they are often injured?
Right.
So this is going to come down to Joe Sheehan, his team, saying, Dr. Voos, everybody that's associated with our medical side, it's like Gladiator. Thumbs up, thumbs down, and then you proceed, right? Are you not entertained?
Yeah. Yeah, I am entertained. I enjoy the heck out of this process, but the way that this has happened at the end with some of this stuff, the Fields epilepsy stuff was
not cool.
So inappropriate.
Not cool.
So inappropriate. And something that frankly, I guess if someone felt the need to get that out there, they should have gone to him and said, "Hey, you're going to have to address this." You know, the idea that he would find out about that going public from Twitter is just awful. It's awful.
Terrible.
And it's not good. Not good at all. Any other takeaways from Jeremiah yesterday on the Browns Live program?
So he was pretty adamant, not adamant, but he was all over the Jamin Davis to the Browns at 26. I said, all right, let's just say that they're not philosophically, they like their linebackers. We're going to play a ton of dime. They're not going to take an off-ball linebacker.
We have 6 of them.
Right there.
Right.
So then what are you looking at? He said Farley's a top 10 pick. He said if your medical team thumbs up him, which is he said right after the grind, he said you take him. Don't even question it. He said JOK falling to the Browns would be a dream scenario that you run to the podium for as well.
Okay.
And then he loved Elijah Moore. Didn't like Rashad Bateman as much for the Browns there. He had Bateman, I think, on his big board 40th. Loved Elijah. He liked Elijah Moore a lot. He also said that the Browns, that from a corner standpoint, he does believe that there is a gap between those first 4 and everybody else. It's significant.
Okay.
But he said he was also told that by somebody he trusts in front offices who said you need to have Asante Samuel in the first round in your mock because he's going to go in the first round. So there was that as well.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that I think as we get closer here, and you don't know what to think or what to make of all of this, but I do wonder if not only will those 4 corners go, but 5 or even 6 could go by the time we pick at 26. So you kind of wonder if there'll be a run on them.
So just to go back through, because from what we talked about yesterday, he has JOK as his number 15 player on his big board. This is going back again. This is Daniel Jeremiah. He had JOK 15, Farley 22nd, but he said Farley's top 10 talent. This is just strictly based on not knowing with his injury issues, and he's got Elijah Moore exactly at 26, which he said lines up pretty nicely with the Browns picking at 26.
Lines up pretty nicely indeed. Yeah. Is it Jamin Davis? Which one is it?
Jamin.
Jamin Davis?
Yes.
Okay. When he said him, because I've seen him mocked to us before, and he's somebody that is rising. Who is he? What's the comp?
3 down linebacker, best in space. He says, this is what he says about it. Davis is a tall and lanky, off-the-ball linebacker. Excellent eyes to key, read, fill, and finish. Uses his quickness to beat blockers to spots. Much better working around spot blocks and taking them on. Outstanding lateral range. His eyes give him a jump start. Stopping power as a tackler, and really excels against the pass. Shown the ability to carry tight ends down the seam as well as mirror running backs on wheel routes. Instinctive as a zone dropper, picking off 3 passes, including an 85-yard pick 6 versus Tennessee. I wish he was allowed to blitz more because he has the traits to excel in that department. Overall, Davis lacks some strength to bang versus blockers, but his speed and playmaking ability to jump off the screen should be a day 1, 3-down impact player at the next level. I'll tell you this. Pete Prisco did a mock today and has Jamin Davis going 9th to the Broncos.
Wow.
This is a guy that people thought was going to go undrafted like a few months ago.
Right. Yeah, this is going to be wild. Absolutely wild times. All right,
guys.
we will we'll see if it's reality, right? Because it's absolute silly season right now. Browns fans, get ready for the NFL draft here in Cleveland. Special editions of Brown Live all this week. Presented by Graham and Fist Wine in a Can. Catch today's show at 3 o'clock for the latest draft news, analysis, and an interview with NFL Network host and Cleveland's own Chris Rose. Watch Browns Live on the Browns website, Browns YouTube channel, and the Browns mobile app with full replays of the show available at youtube.com/Browns. Nathan's one-on-one interview with the guy who will be making the pick for us, Andrew Berry. Coming up next, you'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily. The NFL Draft is here. Stock up at Meijer on top picks like Bounty, Old Spice, and Tide. So you're ready for anything. They're in stock and available. Plus, this week, save over $125 on P&G brands. With M-Perks, place your order in the Meijer app today. The man will be making our selection on Thursday, on Friday, on Saturday as well. All of those picks were made by Andrew Barry. He went one-on-one with Z before he does so.
AB, I'm sure this is probably
you guys are down.
Long time coming, but draft week is finally here. How are you feeling?
Yeah, we're very excited. Always excited. When draft week approaches, and even more excited because we get to be the host city this year. A lot of people have put a ton of time and a ton of hard work into it, so we're ready to go.
All right. Now, you said late last week in your press conference, you said that that free agency doesn't impact the draft as much as maybe people think. But let's talk about free agency for a second. This has been a pretty nice free agent period. Joe Woods is walking around here like the Cheshire Cat. He's grinning from ear to ear. I saw Chris Kiffin yesterday. He's smiling from ear to ear. Everybody's very happy. So let's just talk about overall your thoughts on how this free agency period went and how closely you guys were able to execute your plan.
Yeah, we were very excited about the guys that we were able to add across the roster. And I would also mention the guys that we were able to retain. Look, we went into free agency targeting a number of players with skill sets that we thought married specifically with our defensive system and could kind of add to our current group. And we felt like we were able to achieve that. Now, we have to see how those results play out in the fall and see how it all comes together as our coaching staff puts together the weekly game plan. But we are pleased with the guys that we were add to the organization, and we're looking forward to seeing them play in the fall.
So you've talked a little bit about the guys that came in, early in the process, but one came in late, and it was somebody that you have had your eye on for a few years, and probably it goes back further than that. So let me ask you this. Clearly you wanted Zaven Collins to be a Cleveland Brown for multiple seasons. Was this somebody that, early in your scouting career blew you away, that you've always wanted to be able to have him on your team? Give me the backstory on your, affinity for Jadeveon Clowney.
To be honest, I'd like to tell you that there was some type of creative backstory or fixation. Honestly, it was really more just a fit. We did engage with, Jadeveon and his representation last year, but that really wasn't something that we had sought out to do at the beginning of free agency a year ago. It was something that we actually stumbled into. I've mentioned multiple times that as a front office, we try and keep tabs on everything. We try and check in on everything. And there was a point when we were in maybe late March or mid to late March, and he hadn't signed. And we really started engaging at that point because we were like, hey, maybe this is a chance to be opportunistic and add a good football player who fits into our system. This year, again, we really do explore everything. We really felt like Jadeveon would be a really nice fit in terms of what we want on the defensive line. Someone who is, penetrated defensive end. He's disruptive. He's relentless. And we felt like he's someone who could play all across the defensive line. So to give us really versatility and some matchup flexibility with a number of the other guys that we have. So, although that we have engaged with him over the past 2 off seasons, I can't tell you that there was just some, obsession or funny backstory that led to the acquisition.
Well, let me tell you this. I don't know if you got to see, and I know you're a very busy man, so probably not. I'm going to assume no. The interview that I did with him when he signed, he loves you. I mean, I basically said to him, I said, what made you want to be a Brown? Andrew Barry. What changed in the 2 weeks from the first meeting? He's like, Andrew Barry was all over me, and I love that guy, and I want to come in. And I think that's a pretty neat thing. And it's funny. It was funny. It struck me that this guy was the number 1 overall pick. And it really meant something to him, your pursuit of him, that you wanted him, that you had a plan for him, which he obviously liked as well. But I just thought that was pretty cool. I've done a lot of interviews with free agents who have come here, and that was clearly the most effusive, and I felt personal, which is why I asked about the backstory, between you and Jadeveon. I mean, he was moved by it and certainly gave you a lot of credit for that, which I know you'll deflect and say it's the whole team and everybody puts it together. But it was a neat thing for me to see that from a player.
I'll tell you, we really like Jadeveon as a person. And I think he's going to fit really nicely into our organization. Look, I think this is going to be a good fit on the field, and I think it's going to be a good fit off the field. He's very thoughtful and very deliberate in his decision making. And I think the nice thing, really over probably the past 2 off seasons, is that we have had a chance to have develop a little bit of a personal relationship, which is sort of cool. So we're happy to have him here in Cleveland. We think he'll make a lot of plays for us in the fall, and we think he'll have a lot of success here.
So you look around, you've done all this in free agency, and now here we are at the draft, this is the draft preview show, so we will talk about that. And a lot of people around the league, look, the Browns very complete roster. You can let the draft fall to you. You said in your press conference on Friday that I don't let free agency necessarily impact the draft as much as people think. What did you mean by that?
I think the big thing is I think there's perhaps a little bit of a line of reasoning where it's like, all right, well, you're going to do X, Y in free agency. You're going to do A, B in the draft, or because you did this in free agency, it necessitates that you're going to do this with your first round pick, this with your second round pick, and this with your third round pick. And that's not really how we think of it. Yes, I think free agency is primarily to, fill major needs on the roster. And, every once in a while you can get maybe like a cornerstone player, at the top of the market, that type of thing. But by and large, free agency, I think, is more to fill needs in kind of the short and medium term. With the draft, I think of it as more longer term investment, and largely because that's the one area of player acquisition where you can get players at cost effective pricing. And then I think the second part of it is, although, I'm sure, fans, public have heard about all these draft prospects, how what their potential is, what they'll be in the league. But the reality is it takes time for young players to get to their peak. And so while we'll be excited about every young player that we take, this upcoming week, the reality of it is most guys don't hit the ground running. Most guys don't become bona fide starters or Pro Bowlers in their rookie year. There are some exceptions, certainly.
Sure.
But usually people go through growing pains. So I think if the focus is, hey, these are the needs we're going to fill in free agency, and then we're going to do this in the draft, and we're going to have everything covered. That's just not how we really think.
How do you think about, for example, a lot of guys come in on 1-year contracts. So yes, you've checked boxes off, but that is not necessarily a box that's checked off into 2022. How do you balance going into a draft short-term need versus long-term, and what I would even call, as a lot of companies would have, succession planning for your roster?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a combination of probably everything but short term. I really don't think about the draft in a short term need way at all, unless it's that short term need is also a longer term need as well.
Like Jed, right? That worked out perfect.
Right. I think that's actually a perfect example. Like, and it's it's a little bit easier when you're picking at the top of the draft, and need can align with value, and you can probably dictate the draft a little bit more. When you're picking later in the rounds, you can't really force it. And I think mistakes are made when, either you try and force it, or lose sight of what should be or in my opinion, what should be the overarching objective.
So you talked in that presser, and this is something that fascinated me, because look, I'm not going to ask you, waste your time saying, oh, who are you going to pick? What positions are you targeting? You're not going to tell me, nor should you. And we're not letting anybody know that. We're keeping it secret so you can go in there and dominate on draft night. But what I was fascinated by was the draft board and the concept of the fact that a 7-round draft, and we'll just do simple math here, right? 7 rounds, 30 teams, even though it's 32, 210 players, not to mention compensatory. So we're probably 260 at the end of the day, right? You said we've got 114 draftable guys on our board, and then another 54 that we would like as, undrafted priority free agents. How does that process happen where you get it down that way? Let's just start with how you go from macro level from, 1,000 guys and say, these are the 114 that we actually would like to become Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, so it really ends up being like a 10-month elimination process. So it starts with, really our area scouts, our national scouts, they go out, although, this year virtually go out, I guess, in the fall. And, all of the 1,100 guys that we start with, they'll grade them on tape. They'll go and see them live. They'll get to know them as people. And probably the first round of, I'll make it simple, let's say draftable, undraftable, that's largely that's largely the first wave. So, by the time we get to our first, so we'll have December draft meetings with our scouts, but that's primarily on guys that we would classify as undrafted free agents. Once we get to February, we're largely going over the roughly, I'd say it's usually maybe around 225 that we've given some level of draftable grades. But then we'll also do the players that we may not have given draftable grades to, but are going to the combine. So at that point, we've gone from 1,100 to around 330 players. Once we get out of February meetings, and we watch every guy, go through the background and watch every single one of those 330 players. And some we'll essentially tier them or put them into like an initial placement. And some guys may get eliminated for talent reasons. They may be kind of on that fringe of draftable and undraftable. They may get eliminated for maybe concerns with the makeup or background. They may get eliminated because they may be a fringe draft guy that isn't quite as clean of a schematic fit for us. So, and we'll have a couple other criteria that may eliminate players, and from that we get to maybe probably around 175. We go through the combine process. This year's a little bit different. You usually get medical information, which eliminates another subset of players.
Yep.
March, as we get more measurable data, psychological data, and more quantitative data from our research and strategy group, that may disqualify a couple other handful of players. As we look for guys that we think have the greatest odds of having NFL success. So then, by the end of March, we're down to call it maybe around 145, and once our coaches' input is placed into it, where now they've had a chance to sit down with guys from a football intelligence standpoint, maybe some guys that we like but we're not quite as sure in terms of the usage and fit. They've had a chance to weigh on that. That may either eliminate or cull the list, further down to that 115 to 130 range.
So 115, let's just use that number. That could be the middle of the fourth round. If your 115 was everybody else's 115, that could be. So is it almost, it'd be about 17 a round roughly? Is it projected kind of by round or around where you pick, or is it just these are our top 114 and there's so much variation around the league that it works out that you're able to get these guys in the draft?
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I said that last week, I didn't realize it would be like such a shock, and I guess I should have, just because like when you're in it and you do it every year, it's like, okay, like that's just what happens with the draft is there are 31 other teams and everybody's boards are different. I think people would probably be surprised at how quickly everyone's boards diverge from one another. So, usually like if you're in the first, call it 20 picks, like everyone's board is largely the same. And then it really starts to diverge, end of round one. And then as the draft goes on, it's, more and more and more and more. And if you think about it, like even some of the things I talked about, you have different medical staffs who may have different risk tolerance. You have different schemes. So guys that we may value a little bit more highly, others may not. And then you just have different views on players. So, that number, never really leaves you that light as you get through the draft, which I know may be a surprise to some of the fans listening.
All right. So I could talk to you all day. I find this all very, very fascinating. But what I wanted to leave you with this question. This is your second draft now with the Browns. What's the biggest thing that you've learned that you've implemented, or the biggest change you've made from last year to this year in terms of the process, or something about the process, or something you're looking for in a player that's changed the most from year one to year two?
I'm sorry, do you mean from an evaluation perspective, or
from any perspective? If it's some way about how you want to organize the draft. I know operationally it's going to be different because of COVID, but taking something away from that, maybe it's a strategy thing, it's a thought process thing, it's an evaluation tool, it's something that you learn. Just what's been your biggest learning a year on the job? You're a very obviously perceptive and smart guy, and I'm sure you're always, as Coach Stefanski say, if we're not adapting, we're staying stagnant. So what would you say, if you can share it, is something that where you feel an adaptation you've made or an improvement you've made over your first year and your first draft?
Yeah, I just think the more transparency, the better in the process with our internal group. And the more that people from different disciplines and different perspectives can hear from other disciplines and perspectives throughout the process, the better off and the more robust discussion that you can have on prospects. So I think that's something we're able to do a little bit better this year, largely because we weren't doing a little bit more of a shotgun approach like we were last offseason, just because we started in basically February. We had a year together. And we were able to navigate the challenges of COVID better just because everyone's so much more Zoom proficient. So, all of our March and April draft meetings were really geared. February is a little bit more just kind of the scouts and research group. And then as March and April come, you include your coaching, your player development staff. And then even in March, your area guys are usually out on pro days. So it's usually tough for them to be a part of those meetings. But with Zoom, we were able to actually make it available to guys who weren't at pro day. So I just think the more that you can show people what's behind the curtain, so to speak, the better off.
You guys are up.
Boy, that is great stuff from Z and AB, and I get some questions for Z on that. We will get to those coming up next. The 2021 NFL Draft happens Thursday through Saturday, a couple of days. You can be a part of the action at the NFL Draft Experience taking place outside of First Energy Stadium. The NFL Draft Experience is a free football celebration. It's open to families and fans of all ages. Space is limited, though. Reserve your tickets today via the NFL's One Pass app. Some reaction to that interview that Z did with AB, plus our mock draft of the day is from Chris Sims. He's got some splaining to do. We get into all of that coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If you live and breathe football, you know sometimes keeping your priorities straight can be a challenge. Unfortunately, the same can be true when you gamble. If you find yourself and your gambling is affecting other parts of your life, get some help, get some tips on responsible gambling at keepitfunohio.com. Nice interview you did there with AB, trying to get these are always tough ones too, so you have to kind of take the approach you did because you know you're not going to get anything specific out of them. So what you're really looking for is, you know, trends, things they're looking for, the process, those type of things. And, you know, we talked about this a little bit last week, but I just can't imagine being one of those guys and working for really a full year on this. And then it can all evaporate in 3 days, and you need so you have options and contingencies upon contingencies and be prepared for everything. But can you really be? You know, and that's it. I'm glad he's making the picks for us. We've been lucky because John Dorsey was good at this too in terms of picking players. But this is a hard thing when it comes to draft night and it being now spread out over 3 nights because you get a chance to regroup twice.
Yeah, and I think that you can do a lot of scenario. I don't know if you run through scenarios as much as you do when you're picking at 25. I think that you have so much time to see what's happening and see as it unfolds. But this is a completely different, you know, spot for the Browns. I think, as we know, they're going to be well prepared for it. I'm starting to think, though, to be honest, that the board is not going to fall the way that, you know, we had perhaps hoped it would. I think with the Farley news on both sides of it, right, it doesn't sound like he's going to even get to us anyway. But you get a feeling that these corners are all going to be gone before the Browns pick. Now, what's interesting to note, we're going to talk about, you know, Chris Sims is in a second. He doesn't like Greg Newsome, so he doesn't even have him in the first round. But I haven't seen a mock recently.
No, and I was just going to say, you remember a year ago at this time, we didn't know if a tackle would get to us.
Yep, and 3 did. Three of the 4.
So 3 of the 4. So, you know, I mean, there was all of this, these tackles are all going to be gone. Remember we were like, all right, who's the 5th tackle? And the kid from USC, we were looking at the Ezra Cleveland. Remember all this we were
Austin
doing?
Jackson. Yep.
And then right, all this momentum, all the tackles are going to go in the top 10. We're going to have to pick the 5th tackle. Well, no, we took the 2nd one off the board. So, you know, there's so much nonsense going on right now. And speaking of nonsense, and I do love Chris Sims. His mock is pretty wild, and we have. I'm interested to play these clips. He has us picking Zaven Collins, who I think, without question, has been the most mocked to us if you go back to January.
Yep.
I haven't seen as much of it more recently, but don't you think, Z? Like if you were to look at all of the mocks since January, Zaven Collins to us at 26, isn't he the number one most mocked?
Yeah, if you were to add it up. For sure. Now, I would say his trend line, though, is a steep downward trend line other than Chris Sims keeping this alive. I haven't seen Zaven Collins to us in many other mocks recently.
No, it's been a long time, in fact. Yeah, but there was a time for a month straight where you'd open a mock and it was number 26, Zaven Collins. So here's Chris Sims on his podcast on why he goes with Collins to us at 26.
If Onwuzurike was on the board for the Browns, I think there's a real chance they could think of that. I do. You know, I look at the Browns, and I had a tough time with them here. I did. I ultimately go with Zaven Collins from Tulsa.
Okay.
And this might be out of the mold of what they really want. But, you know, middle linebacker, you've heard me talk about it. It's so important to this scheme. You know, whether it's Miles Jack or, you know, Bobby Wagner or Fred Warner or Darius Leonard. You know, it's Deion Jones in Atlanta. It's all the same defensive scheme. They got to have that athletic guy that, can run sideline to sideline, but also gets asked for a middle linebacker to do some pretty interesting things in their zone coverages to where you got to be athletic. I'm going with Zaven Collins, who's bigger than the traditional type of guy that this defensive scheme would like. But the athlete is too special. I mean, that's where I just keep coming back to it going, man, it's 6'4", it's right around 260, and I know that, you know, Bobby Wagner's 240 something or like that, but this is a guy that kind of moves just as well as those guys. I mean, he really can run. He's great in, like, the ability to drop in zones with his long arms and open his hips and do all that type of stuff. So I came away looking at, first off, I'm a big fan of Zaven Collins, but second off, with the Browns, you know, that to me was the biggest need for their football team, other than maybe that disruptive 3 technique, which when Zarike leaves, I just think this is where
5 seconds.
Going Zaven Collins, Tulsa, and it's probably the ones that I'm probably the least confident in my whole draft here.
I have to be careful here because there was a time on this show when I said if a certain coach was hired that I would do something I can't even remember, and then within a year he was walking in the halls. So I have to be careful.
Yeah.
With David Collins. So we won't go personal. It does not seem like this fits at all to us. And I never felt like it was a fit. You're talking about a 260-pound middle linebacker. When you think about linebackers on our roster that are 3-down type linebackers, both Walker and Phillips, who I know they love, both would fill that void. And to me, from an athlete standpoint, profile standpoint, elite trait, he does not fit what I think would transcend us taking a linebacker. JOK might do that. Maybe Jamin Davis does that. I don't know him as much. He's a fast riser. Those would be the type of people that I think would transcend our thoughts on the position based on who we already have, not necessarily Collins.
Right, and you know, he mentioned that Levi Onwuzurike could be an option for the Browns out of Washington, 6'3", 290 interior guy. Now, Lance Zierlein has a round 2 grade on him, but his comp is Sheldon Richardson, who just played here for the Cleveland Browns. I would be very surprised. I would be surprised at an off-ball linebacker that is not a Swiss Army knife. So then you could say, all right, well, does Zaven Collins fit into that because he can be a plus blitzer? He is good in coverage. So Zaven Collins wouldn't necessarily shock me. I do think it would be surprising. JOK would be less surprising because I just think he is such a weapon that he can play nickel, he can play linebacker, he can play safety. Yeah. We could have 4 safety looks out there. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of things that could be done with him, and he's got some kind of insane trait, right? That you talked about that, and I asked Daniel Jeremiah that question, and he was the guy that he said, from just a trait standpoint, if he's there, that you've got to give him a look. I think if this draft goes this way, Greg Newsome would be the one that the Browns take. I still think wide receiver is in play there, and I think very much a trade back is in play out of 26. I also think it's possible the Browns say, you know what, we've got these 9 picks. We don't need 2 3s and 2 4s. Let's go up and let's get somebody that we want. You know, now there's a lot of talk that J.C. Horn could go 12 to Philly after Surtain goes 10 to the Cowboys. That those 2 might be off the board that early. So again, a lot of scenarios. I'm with you. I'm ready to just find out what happens. But, you know, Zaven Collins at 270, which he is now, is maybe trying to say I'm more of an edge. But it just feels to me he's more, with his skills, if he's going to play on the line, a 3-4 outside stand-up, 3-4 outside linebacker, which we could use in certain situations, but that is not going to be a staple of what we do defensively.
No. And furthermore, to your point, when you have Greg Newsome still on the board, or even if you wanted to, Azeez Ojulari, who's still on the board when this pick is made in his mock, or even a receiver. There are receivers that are still on the board that I think would make more sense based on where we are at this point. But who knows? And that wasn't even. That was far from the most shocking thing that Chris Sims said in his mock draft. His placement of Justin Fields was that. We will get to that a little bit later in the program. One of the people who is certainly offering support for Justin Fields is our quarterback, Baker Mayfield. You've no doubt seen the ads on ESPN. He was available to the media yesterday at 3 o'clock. We will have some highlights from that coming up, give our reaction to what we heard from our quarterback. It's coming up at the top of the hour. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, second hour here, Cleveland Browns Daily. Beau Bishop for my great friends at Northeast Factory Direct. If you're sick and tired of your outdated kitchen, this is the perfect time to upgrade. Go to Northeast Factory Direct. High quality, name brand furniture and hot tubs for about half the price of the fancy retail stores. You know that, or you should. But did you know that Northeast Factory Direct can also get high-quality cabinets for about 60 to 70% less than the expensive kitchen remodeling stores? It is simple. You make an appointment, you bring in some basic measurements, and they're going to walk you through everything. The best part of it, the appointment and the design are free. Northeast Factory Direct cuts out all of the costs associated with traditional stores, so you can buy nice stuff at really incredible prices. Also, 0% financing is available. That's right, 0% financing available. So you're thinking about remodeling your kitchen, it is simple. Go to northeastfactorydirect.com and schedule your appointment today. Our quarterback, Baker Mayfield, had a press availability yesterday at 3 o'clock. Among the topics of conversation, his fifth-year option being picked up. Here's your quarterback on that.
First and foremost, that's one of those things that's not in my control, but I'm truly thankful and grateful for them taking the chance, Andrew and the Haslam family, for picking up that fifth-year option and, making it one more year in Cleveland and, extending this journey that we started 3 years ago today. Just saw something on that. So I've been kind of thinking about that all day. So I'm very happy about that. And then, in terms of long-term deals or all that, I'm taking it one day at a time. Still got 2 seasons left on this, this full rookie contract now to see what happens.
Yeah, and it's, this is a formality more than anything else, and then you'll start working towards a longer-term situation with Baker here in Cleveland, and the reality is he's be the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns for a long time.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense on both sides right now to take a wait and see. I think from Baker's perspective especially, let's find out what salary cap is next year. Let's find out where things are coming back to normal, what these deals can look like. And I think if you always want to be the last guy to do the deal, right? If you're Baker, you ideally want a Josh Allen, or Lamar Jackson to get their deal done, and then now that's the market, and now you go after that. And I'm fully assuming that the kind of play we saw from Baker Mayfield last year, especially over the second half of the season, is what we're going to continue to see into this year and perhaps even better. Maybe not the touchdown to interception ratio remaining 10-1. I think that's kind of unrealistic, but you are going to have, I think, elite level quarterback play. And so then he's going to be in a great position by taking his time. There are 2 years, as he said, his fourth year plus the fifth-year option, which is the following season. So there's plenty of time to get this done on both sides. And I think if I were advising Baker, I would want all the information possible about what the financial situation for the league is going to be looking like. And if I'm the Browns, I want to take the time and say, let's see it again. Let's see this high level of play that we know you're capable of and we expect. Let's see it again. Makes sense.
Baker has bet on himself his entire life, his entire football playing career. So
I'd bet on him right now.
This is the least surprising thing, and I would too. And I don't think he's worried at all about it.
No.
Not a bit. And I think you want to see that thing play out, and you want to see those TV deals play out the way that you articulated and what's going to happen with the cap. So it makes sense for everybody. He was also asked yesterday about the new additions to the team via free agency.
I've been extremely impressed, with the pieces that we're bringing in and reaching out to these guys to, welcome them in with open arms and to know that they're coming into a place that wants to win. That it's inviting the guys who want to contribute and obviously are key essential pieces and will help us out a ton. So looking forward to it. Obviously, they've done a great job and an exciting week for us as well. It's draft week, but as for the guys that are already on the team, we're doing these meetings. Everybody's working out and doing these things. So it's got a good feeling to it, but it's April for a reason, so that we're setting the expectations ourselves. Everybody can, talk on the outside, but I'm excited about, the people we've brought in just culture-wise.
It's just going to be fun to see this all together, whether it's in mini camp or training camp or whenever it is, but just to see that defense go up against the offense and iron sharpening iron a little bit on both sides of the ball.
No, it's going to be a lot of fun. And he said something that I've heard now a couple of the veterans on this team talk about, that not only did we bring in incredibly talented guys, but they love the people, not just the players, but the people as well in terms of their leadership, what they bring. Everybody in the league's got friends around the league. And so when you're a veteran, I talked with Joel Bitonio earlier this morning. He's like, when I talk to my sources around the league about, the guys we brought in, glowing reviews of them. And so I think the locker room and, hold people who will come in and be leaders, hold people accountable, who will do things the right way. I think that is a huge, huge part of what Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski want. Smart, tough, accountable players. And we're seeing that permeate the locker room. I think there is kind of a mold for what a Browns player must be like on the field, but also more, and perhaps almost as important or equally as important, in the locker room.
Well, you gathered that from the conversations you had. I mean, the conversations, the one-on-one you did with John Johnson, the one-on-one that you did with Walker. I mean, you can sense the type of people they are. I mean, it's obvious, and it's not just those two. It goes beyond them. Clowney too. Like they're all really impressive human beings, and you those were gathered in those one-on-ones you did. You have a way with those people. All right, here is this is a rarity. Everyone is coming back offensively, including the coaching staff. Here's 6 on that.
When it comes in terms of looking at teams that have been successful, not just teams, any business model, any organization, when it comes to continuity and everybody being on the same page and having the same goals, that's so important. So for me going into it, this is the first time since having Coach Stoops from 2015 to 2016 as the same head coach. It's the first time it's happened for me, and I'm obviously looking forward to it, to continuing to build on what we had started last year. And like I said, it's nowhere near from being over, and we weren't satisfied when it came to just making it into the playoffs, winning one game and then losing in the next round. So I think that's the great part about what we have coming back, is everybody got a little taste of that. New faces and some guys that had made it farther. Everybody's hungry for more.
It's pretty illuminating when he talks about it has been since his sophomore and junior year at Oklahoma, because Lincoln Riley got the job his senior year, and so it was Stoops as a sophomore and junior was the last time that he had the same head coach in back-to-back years. And for people who continue to doubt him, also take into consideration, along with the great play, the 10-1 touchdown to interception, take into consideration what he's been dealt and the challenges that he's been dealt as a quarterback and has come through it. I mean,
yep.
Not a lot have. He's the only top 5 quarterback since 2017 to be on the team that drafted him. That tells you all you need to know. That's how hard it is.
It's very hard, and he's played very well, and, he's got belief. He's in a great system, and the continuity. I mean, we have not had, in my entire time here, which begins in the 2013 season, we have not had the same offensive and defensive coordinators for 2 consecutive seasons. Wow. The closest we would have come was in 17-18 when it was Hugh and Greg Williams, but then by 18, Todd Haley was brought in as to run the offense, and so it was Todd Haley and Greg Williams, and then that's it. We have not had that kind of continuity at all since then. And so this is incredible continuity. And in fact, it's the entire coaching staff that's back. Forget just the coordinators. Everybody on the coaching staff is back. We have not had that.
Wow.
And that's, I think, it's a great thing. And, you talk with the guys, and they say, it's not like I have to learn anything new. Now it's just refining and getting better to change this technique here or learn from the film of a year ago how we can make what we're already doing better. And it's so hard in this game. It is, we've heard it is a game of inches. It's a game of execution and plans, etc. But when you already come into it with that knowledge and now you're refining, it's like anything. It's anything you do in your life. That's how you get better.
Yeah. Yep, that's it. Fine. We got time for this real quick. Do we have time for this real quick?
Come on.
Yeah,
yes.
one time.
This is the best. We buried
UFOs
the lead.
and Sasquatch. Go.
I'm a firm believer in UFOs and Sasquatch.
Same.
So it's real. I saw it. I'm glad the Navy finally confirmed some more pictures. Now everybody doesn't think I'm as crazy. I believe.
I'm with him on the UFO. Sasquatch is a little harder for me to believe with all my time spent in the Northern California wilderness, and just having never come across him. You would think that if there would have been a Sasquatch, I would have come across him in my youth in the Bay Area, but certainly UFOs I'm with.
All of it. Sasquatch, the Yeti, the Abominable Snowman. There is too much ingrained.
Yetis, too. You're going that far.
The Yeti, I think, is 100%. There's too much ingrained in the culture
Is he
of
the
Nepal.
Abominable Snowman guy?
Yes, but there is so much ingrained in the culture of Nepal, and it's too much. It's too much. There's too much to tell me that that's not real. So I'm all in on the Yeti. Sasquatch, sure, why not? And definitely Definitely UFOs.
Oh, UFOs.
100%.
That's a lock. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Chris Rose, NFL Network, will join us coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Injuries during childbirth require experienced counsel. Call the lawyers at Elk & Elk for clear answers to what happened during your child's birth. Elk & Elk, a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Call 1-800-ELK, Ohio today. And with that, we head out on the hotline for a visit with our good buddy Chris Rose, NFL Network host, one of the hosts, of course, on the NFL Draft coverage this week here in Cleveland, and also one of our own, of course. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time. Let me just hit you with this right out of the gates, buddy. For the longest time, and you know this well, the draft was the Super Bowl for the Cleveland Browns. And now that we have the draft, the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl for the Cleveland Browns.
Doesn't it feel so much better that way?
Yeah, I think so.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. It really is. You know, when we first got this gig a few years ago, they were like, man, this is going to be a great night for Cleveland. They're going to be picking in the top 5 and hosting the draft. I was like, I know. And now we had this amazing 2020 season, and here we are picking 26th, which I think is what we were originally, because it's interesting. My 15-year-old son, he came up to me and goes, Dad, when is the last time we picked this late in the first round without any trades? And I was like, oh, my God. So I think it's 1995 when we were originally supposed to pick 26th. We traded up to 10 I believe. That was the year we traded Eric Metcalf and like a first rounder and a future first round, something like that, to Atlanta, and moved up to 10 with hopes of getting Kyle Brady, the old tight end out of Penn State. He went number 9 to the Jets. I think Belichick threw a hissy fit and traded all the way back to 30, and we took Craig Powell, linebacker out of Ohio State. Not that worked out great, but we're not here to relive that. So anyway, let's move on.
Chris, have you gotten to be, downtown? Are you in town already?
Yeah, I'm here, and I was actually doing some work with the Browns today. Shooting these pieces is a ton of fun. We specialized on something called the Cleveland Huddle, which the Browns started, where they help a bunch of black-owned restaurants throughout the pandemic. And so I was at one on the near west side called Sauce the City, and my man Chef Vic. It's a piece that'll start airing tomorrow on our social media channels, and I think, Nathan, on your show as well. So it's just a great opportunity. I'm going to be showing you around the NFL draft experience and how you guys can enjoy it. So it's just been working with the Browns and NFL Network for my week here is like a dream come true. It's just great.
It's awesome, and I've heard that it's bustling down
go ahead,
there.
Zeke.
I was just saying, I heard it's hustling and bustling in downtown, and everybody all around the helmets and the stage, and people are fired up about this.
Yeah, I haven't been to our setup yet, but I talked to a bunch of our producers who were there, and they were like, Rosie, your hometown did it right. I'm like, yeah. They're like, now, can you do anything about the rain? I was like, yeah, I'll make a quick call on that one. No problem.
Yeah, it's always going to be difficult. Chris, I picked up on something you said in the first answer, where you said I believe you said your 15-year-old son. He said, Dad, when's the last time we picked 26th? How did you ingrain that in him, and how much easier is it when you win 12 games than when you don't?
Well, so it's fascinating. I've lived out in L.A. since the end of '99. My wife is from there. Our 2 sons, who are 20 and 15, both born and raised there, and all Cleveland through and through. They are Browns, Indians, Cavs, Ohio State, anything. They're not L.A. They're nothing else. So they have lived through some lean falls, right? Last year, December comes and we are right in it, and they were both saying, they're like, this is amazing. What you said came true, Dad. I was like, yeah, like your dad isn't the dip, you know what you think he is. And what I told him was, hey, the Cavs won it all in 2016. The Indians got you to Game 7 of the World Series that year. You haven't experienced Cleveland fandom until the Browns are in contention. And they would always be like, Dad, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I was like, guys, please, I'm telling you. So we got to the beginning of December, and so we'd win on Sunday, and Monday they're like, can Sunday get here fast enough? I was like, oh, my God, you guys have turned into me. Like, this is 15-year-old me. And it was great. And the only downer was I could not watch the playoff games with them because I was going on NFL Network. Unfortunately, work called. And I had to go on air right after the Browns games were over. So when we beat the crap out of Pittsburgh on Sunday night, and I'm talking to a boozed-up Joe Thomas on TV.
Yes, I remember that one well.
It was great. I mean, it was just – I was like, this is like I get to cover this stuff and I get paid. This is unreal.
And you know what? It feels like last year was the start of something. We're running it back on offense. We've made all these acquisitions on defense. What do you think of the state of this roster headed into the draft? I mean, we still have the draft to add talent, but it looks pretty good right now, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the last time that you looked at the Browns offense and you were like, yeah, there's no question marks coming into camp. Like, even last year, we were wondering, okay, who's going to be the right guard? And we figured out who that was going to be pretty quickly once Wyatt Teller kind of took a practice rep. We were like, yeah, okay, we'll take that animal. But really, there's not a lot of job openings on offense, which is great. Maybe a swing tackle, maybe another backup lineman, maybe the 5th receiver or the 4th running back, however they decide to divide that room.
Right.
But when you get to defense, there are vacancies, okay? The Sheldon Richardson release is – I understand why it happened. I get it. That's tough. The timing is very difficult because free agency is basically done unless another wave of veterans become available. And this is Daniel Jeremiah said this is the worst defensive tackle class he's evaluated since 2003. So, they might have to find a guy there, and that's tough. But hey, listen, that's what you do when you're a good team. Sometimes you have to fill holes. I mean, the Chiefs had to just trade away first-round pick and multiple picks because they cut both their tackles. So it happens in this league. It's how do you evaluate? Do you have faith in your scouts' ability and your player personnel guys to bring in the right people so that those holes aren't gaping holes?
Yeah, that's the idea, Chris. And I wanted to ask you about Kevin Stefanski because I think his approach to all of this has been just tremendous. And Nathan and I, get to host his coach's show, and buddy, we try to heap praise on him, and he's like Dikembe Mutombo, just rejects it.
Yeah.
Will not have it, will not take it. But we can see what he does, and we can see it permeate throughout the entire roster in the building. From your vantage point, to have somebody like Stefanski, the idea, by the way, that we have a trick play every game and it works, it's just crazy what we witnessed in year one. It was really remarkable. We're close to it. What did you see from Stefanski in year one?
Yeah, I thought he was remarkable. I met him at the Combine in 2020, so it was the last thing we all did before things got shut down. Yeah. And I was so impressed in the 15 minutes I spoke with him. He is on point with every decision he makes. And the one thing you heard about him coming from Minnesota was the players love him. And I can understand that because he is exactly the same guy every time. Every time he meets with the media on Zoom, it's the same thing. Like, he's tough to cover because he doesn't give you a whole lot. He's super smart, and he's got a great dry wit about you. He's never, he's never going to step out about a player, ever. Bruce Arians does. I mean, he basically called Tom Brady terrible in game one. Now, that's how he rolls, and it ended up working for him. But that can get you, that can get you a little sideways in the locker room if it's not taken the right way. And I think Stefanski's consistency is one of his greatest traits in that job. I mean, I know he was wearing a mask every play last year, but, man, I couldn't tell if he was ever pissed off or happy.
Never changes.
Even
Steven.
Yeah. And
I wish you could dial a little of that into my life. Holy smokes.
Well, he and Andrew Barry they're the same guy from that regard. And you've got the reigning coach of the year, the youngest GM in NFL history, who had a pretty darn good first season. And this is, Chris, when's the last time you felt this good about just the top of this organization and the fact that you can sleep at night feeling pretty confident they're going to be together for a while?
Probably since the days of Marty Schottenheimer and Ernie Accorsi. Like, no joke.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah. It's been that long. So, yeah, I do feel great about that. I feel great about the future. They've got some tough decisions to make. Part of the Sheldon Richardson, like, I understand it from a business standpoint. They've got guys they have to take care of, right?
Yes.
And we know they just picked up the fifth-year options on Baker and Denzel. What happens with Chubb? What happens with Wyatt Teller? What happens with their wide receivers moving forward? It's hard to carry two $15 million a year receivers.
Yes.
But they have plans in place, and I do trust them. There was a great tweet by Charles Robinson, who covers the NFL, and he said, right after Richardson got released, he said, if you do indeed trust what Andrew Barry and the Browns are doing, you have to go along with this. You have to, because he's pushed so many of the right buttons. You can't panic over this move. So, I think we all kind of went, oh, my God, because Richardson was so good for 2 years and so durable that it hurt. But big picture, I did have to take a step back and be like, okay, I believe, so I will go along with it.
Chris, it is great having you on. It's great to have you back home. Thanks for your time today, buddy.
Absolutely. Can't wait to get going on Thursday. And when that 26th pick is announced, the 10 minutes, by the way, watch the crowd for the 10 minutes. That is the best part of this. I was in Nashville, Chicago, Philly, Dallas, New York, when their respective teams are on the clock in the first round. It's the craziest scene. So soak that up, that 10 minutes. It is a ton of fun.
Yeah, certainly is. Great stuff, Chris. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
All right, that is Chris Rose of the NFL Network, and tune in to the NFL Network's live coverage of the 2021 NFL Draft from Cleveland starting Thursday at 8. Imagine how crazy they'll go when we trade up to 4 and draft Kyle Pitts.
Yes, by the way, if you want more Chris Rose, we're going to Browns Live. We'll shift it more to the draft focus on what the Browns will do. Boy, let's go.
Well, this is what you get. You get a luminary like that. You do a nice piece like you and I did, a couple of big Bs, doing a nice in-depth, get at the heartstrings of it, and then you can go a little nuts and bolts.
Right.
You get a little nuts and bolts at the 3 o'clock on the Browns Live program.
Beautiful with the broad strokes, the background, and now we're going to little details.
Oh, sure. You can really get into the devil of the details on the fifth corner. So you'll have that to look forward to, which is nice here in about a half hour. We want to play the Chris Sims's comments on Justin Fields, who he has going 32nd overall. Plus, you'll hear Nathan's thoughts on the top 5 wide receiver prospects that make the most sense for us. Could it be a pick at 26? Could it be someone you trade up for or trade back and scoop up? We will get to that coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. The NFL Draft is here. Time for you to stock up at Meijer on the top picks like Bounty, Old Spice, and Tide, so you're ready for anything. They're in stock, and they are available. Plus, this week, save over $125 on P&G brands with M-Perks. Place your order in the Meijer app today. We spoke earlier about what Chris Sims had going on at number 26 for us with Zaven Collins, but the headliner, perhaps this was some of the motivation in all of this, was who he had at pick number 32, and that, of course, is Justin Fields, falling all the way to 32. We've seen him mocked everywhere. We've never seen him even remotely mocked this low. Here is Chris Sims on his podcast talking about the former Ohio State quarterback and his position of being picked 32nd overall to the Buccaneers.
I'm going Bucs take Justin Fields at 32. Bucs got everything.
They do.
There's no need on their football team. And I didn't go into this with a preconceived notion. Justin Fields for 32.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. You know how I do this. I want to be right. I tried to use logic. I know it's not my big board, but I went for, this team needs these kind of players, or this GM likes it. So I went that way. Mm-hmm. And as I tried to do it fair, you heard we organically talked about the teams that we thought maybe could be in it. I don't know. But as you could tell, I could see this happening. And if he's there, they're going to take him because they're going to go, great, this is perfect for you. Learn from Tom Brady, get some of the polish. Brady will be able to teach him some of the mechanical stuff. And then, Brady wants to retire? Great, we got our guy, and he can take off.
If that is the end of the night, that'll be the greatest draft show, 3 hour, 4 hours, however long it goes.
If that happens,
that we've ever had.
If it happens at the end of the night, I'm dropping the mic and I'm not coming into work the next day. I'm just going, nope, sorry guys, I called it.
So you've gone through this, and so this is your best, guess and trying to get, read people's mind, your own evaluations. But it seems so unlikely that if Justin Fields is falling and falling and falling, that at some point in the 20s, some team doesn't just trade up into the 20s, mid-20s.
That's where and listen, I thought of that. So let's talk about that, right? Like, would Atlanta maybe do that? Would the Denver, would they sit there, and their pick, 41?
We didn't like him at 9, but now that he's 20-something.
Yeah, right. Or, We're at 41. Maybe we try to get up to 29 or 28 to get him. Yeah, I don't know. But I know I have my concerns about him. I know there's other teams that have the concerns about him. And the two teams, the Bears, I don't know if they have that green light like we talked about. And I got Washington making the play for Trey Lance. Mm-hmm. So that's where it got dicey. And we'll see where it goes.
That is the interesting thing is you do run out of destinations after a while, especially at the quarterback position.
You start to go back to the end of the first round, and once you got past Pittsburgh, I just started to go back to Atlanta, and I started going back to Detroit, and I went back to Denver, and I went, well, okay, 10 seconds. Well, they make the move. Maybe that's what happens. I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see how I do with this mock draft.
I hope it's 32 for 32.
It is conceivable, certainly, that he will drop, and we've heard from enough people who think that that's possible, and there's a wide array of opinion on Justin Fields. And there are two. Aaron Rodgers dropped.
Yep.
Brady Quinn dropped. I mean, this happens. Sometimes it happens, and you fall, and somebody swoops in and grabs you. I would have a hard time believing that he would get that far down. I'd have a really hard time believing that. I still think he'll go in the top 10. Is the way that I think this thing will go, and I certainly can't see him being there at 32.
Me neither. I think he will go well beyond that, or well before that. It's interesting. Again, he's the one person, and I'm looking forward. We're going to talk with Ben Albright on Thursday's show. He's the one guy that Ben says definitely could still go in the top 10, but he's the guy that the media and the teams have the biggest divergence on. We'll see if that's true. Maybe it's all smoke. It's wild, and it's got to be so hard. To your point, you had a kid. This is a kid who was very, very good, very accomplished, played under very bright lights at Ohio State and in huge games and played very well, and is almost shell-shocked in an interview now because of, private information being released and all the critiques of him. And it's unfortunate this happens in the draft. And, hopefully he's not.
It seems like it's all on him. It does seem like this year's entire draft dialogue has been about him by 100 miles. I don't even know who I would say is second. It's all been around him. Yep. I don't even know who if you think about all of the conversation for 2 months, like who's number 2? Who's the number 2 most talked about? I don't even know who it would be.
Pitts, but it's
him
all
by
positive.
100 miles.
It's all Pitts,
but
Pitts,
it's all
but
positive.
It's all positive.
But it's all positive. So there's nothing like he has been the singular lightning rod of the process, and I do wonder if it can do does it do long-term damage? He looked like a different human when Herbie interviewed him than the guy that I saw throughout the course of the season. I mean, it was relatively alarming, that side of it. So it's just a really brutal spot for him, and it's hopefully this thing can't get over soon enough for him. Let's talk wide receiver prospects and those that make the most sense for us. As you went through this process and you started to think about, it's really two different types of receiver for us, correct? There's this notion of, all right, future planning. We need to let's try to get, if there's a number one that falls to us, yeah. And then there's immediately, it'd be nice to have a guy who could take the top off.
Right, and speed and danger, and somebody that can be used on the jet sweeps and get the ball in space, and they're dangerous to score. So here are a couple guys that I think could be there for the Browns. Rashad Bateman, 6 foot 190, doesn't play as fast on tape as his 4.40, but he's a great route runner. He understands how to create separation. He's an outside target, 1,691 yards, 13 touchdowns in his last 18 games. Very talented. We heard Matt Waldman say that he was the Nick Chubb of the wide receiver class this year. He's his favorite guy. Keenan Allen is a comp I've heard quite a bit from him. That could be a legit number one receiver. Now, Rashad Bateman, though, is the kind of guy that you would want to pair with a burner. He could be, for example, the Adam Thielen in this offense, but you still need your Stephon Diggs. Now, Odell Beckham Jr. is here and could provide that for you this year as well. But Bateman is an interesting one. Then we get into a couple guys who are more in that slot category. Kadarius Toney out of Florida, 6 foot 193, runs a 4.3 740. Last year, 984 yards, 10 touchdowns, was second-team All-American. First-team All-SEC as a returner, so he's somebody who could help out Coach Preef there. Rubbery joints, insane change of direction, cutting abilities, dangerous after the cat, a slot receiver with speed and big playmaking ability. As is Elijah Moore. And Elijah Moore is somebody that, we've heard people say to us, that's now the consensus number 4 receiver after the big 3. Now, Matt Waldman would say Bateman's in my top 4, but if Bateman's not, Elijah Moore, people love. 5'9", 178, 4.3, 540. 8 games last year, 86, 1,193 yards, 8 touchdowns, led the FBS at 10.8 catches a game, 149.1 yards per game. First-team All-American. Who's his player comp? Antonio Brown, but without the baggage. He's a great kid. Slot. He's a slot guy, though. Great routes, incredible quickness, toughness, hands, total weapon, will help in the run game and on jet sweeps. Add a dimension we do not have to our offense right now.
Yeah, he's an Ole Miss kid, too, so those stats are against SEC competition, and they're done so in a Lane Kiffin offense, which would have been a pro-style offense. So there's a lot to take in with there, and there's a history with Ole Miss receivers recently being very good in their transition. Yeah,
A.J. Brown comes to mind. He broke A.J. Brown's records there. Rondale Moore from Purdue, 5'7", 181. The tough part about Rondale Moore to me is he's played 7 games due to injury and COVID the last 2 years. But in 2018, as a freshman, 114 catches, 1,258 yards, 12 touchdowns. He's the first Big Ten freshman receiver to ever be first-team All-American, ever.
He had a game against Ohio State in West Lafayette that will go down forever as one of the great individual performances you've ever seen. And the feeling was that coming out of that, or in Big Ten circles, and talking to people who work the Purdue games, is that he was kind of viewed himself kind of like a football Ferrari, in that he had posted this perfect lap, if you will, and that if he didn't feel 100% perfect, he wasn't going to play. And that's kind of been the deal. And it really wasn't until and the only reason he really played this year, because he didn't play at all his sophomore year, the only reason he really played as a junior was, or very minimally as a sophomore, I can't remember exactly, but I don't think much at all, a couple of games. The only reason he played this year is because there was starting to be chatter that, does this guy love football? So, because he opted out and then decided to opt back in once the season had started. So that is something that freshman year was basically his perfect lap, and there was concern, can he match it?
Right, and we'll find out.
He's electric.
His comp is Tyler Lockett in some of the scouting circles. Competitive, fast, great, breaks out of routes, excellent after the catch, great character, inside, outside, but only 5'7". He is only 5'7".
I think he's a little more.
Is he like a smaller person?
I mean, he's not the I was just going to say that. Good job out of you. He's not the. I hate doing that because Percy was so
ridiculous,
physically empowering and so strong, and he does not have that body strength that Percy had. But his game that was the one that I was going to say. It's a good job out of you. Is I just hate throwing that around because of how much I respect the athlete that Percy Harvin was.
Percy Harvin was nasty.
Rondale
Moore, 71% of his college yards came after the catch, so he's not necessarily a proven downfield threat, even though he is a home run hitter. So that's an interesting thing. How does that fit with us? Terrace Marshall Jr., if you were to ask me who sounds the most like they could become a legit number one do-it-all receiver in the NFL, it's Terrace Marshall, 6'2", 205, 4.40. He scored 23 times in his last 19 games. In 7 games last year, 731 yards, 10 touchdowns, over 15 yards a catch. He, like Donovan Peoples-Jones, was the number one wide receiver prospect in his high school class. Outside wide receiver with the talent. He's been inconsistent. He's raw. There are some issues with his feet, which I never like with big people. Feet are very important, but Dane Brugler says he could be like a better Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton's been very good in Denver. He's interesting. He feels like he's falling a little bit. Then there's Dyami Brown, 6 foot 180.
I like real quick before you get on Dyami, real quick on Marshall. He caught 13 touchdowns on a team that had Chase and Jefferson with Burrow and Allaire. He had 13 touchdowns. Now Burrow threw for 60, so there's a lot to go around. But he was the third guy on that team that had those two guys. And so there is an elite level of talent here. And they didn't have a quarterback to save their life last year at LSU.
Yeah, he still gave him 100 yards a game, 10 touchdowns in 7 games, and 15 yards a catch. I like him a lot. It feels like there's some medical concerns around him right now. Dyami Brown from UNC, 6 foot 189, 4.40. This guy's averaged over 20 yards per catch over his last 100 catches.
Yeah.
8 touchdowns of more than 40 yards. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, over 20 yards a catch and 20 total TDs. First team All-ACC, led ACC in receiving. Best double-move vertical receiver in the class. Dane says play style reminiscent of Stephon Diggs, who we know thrived in this offense. He's more second round. He's a second-round guy. A later guy to keep an eye on if we don't necessarily go early is Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan. 5'9", 190, 4.39, 40, averaged over 20 yards a catch 3 straight seasons, led the FBS last year in all-purpose yards. He was the MAC Special Teams Player of the Year. And I know Mike Prefer would very much like Dwayne Eskridge here as a great returner. Last year, he averaged 131 receiving yards per game, 23.1 yards per catch, 8 touchdowns, but he's got a very simple route tree, incredible straight line speed, definitely can stretch the field on crossers, jet sweeps. He's a great kick returner, 27.5 and a touchdown, was kind of compared to Jacoby Ford. And then the last one real quickly is Amari Rogers out of Clemson, 5'9", 212. Led the ACC in receptions last year. He's more powerful because he's built like a running back at 212, can break tackles, plays fast, super competitive physical, kind of like a Deebo Samuel, which is a role certainly in this offense that you saw happening with the Niners last year. So those are some names to watch. I think Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore, Bateman, Terrace Marshall, Brown are the most intriguing. I think Rondale Moore is very intriguing too, but he's going to be a very set thing that he does for you. The others I feel like could do a lot of things for you.
I think Moore, I think right away Moore could come in, return kicks and punts, and you could have a package, for him right away. I mean, that's Jump Street. Put him in and he's ready to go and could contribute right away. It's just there's a lot of ways they can go here. There really is, and I'm fascinated to see how they do it. And a lot of these guys can help right away. I wanted to check this out. I just wanted to make sure I had this right because I was trying to remember if that was the way that it went along. You mentioned Amari Rogers out of Clemson.
Yes.
I was trying to remember if he is the one that had the day on Shaun Wade and the Buckeyes, or if it was Powell. I think it might have been Powell. I'm trying to remember which one of those two guys did it. But one of them was pretty much had their way. And I can't remember which one. I think it was Cornell Powell. Yeah, okay. Cornell Powell, 8 catches, 139. He was the one who had his way against the Buckeyes. Rogers was 8 for 54. Was Powell. So, all right, very good. Yes, it's a talented group with a lot of ways to go, and you can get an impact guy. You can get a number one. I'm with you on Marshall. I like him a lot in terms of what he can do, and the track record is good with
gonna
LSU
be a thumbs
guys.
up, thumbs up, thumbs down question, I would imagine, with him. But he's the one guy. It's a small wide receiver class. I mean, we're getting the guys who are at 6 feet. We're like, oh, that's a big receiver in this class. It's a small group from a size perspective. He gives you that size, but again, there's something going on with his feet. So
him and Bateman are the only ones that are in the 6'2" range, right, of the guys you mentioned?
Bateman's listed as 6 foot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe he gotten shorter since he played at Minnesota.
Maybe they
Maybe he's come down a
him
couple
at
inches.
6'7". But I checked it. That's both in Danes and at NFL.com. 6 foot.
Okay, so he's come down since his playing height. Okay, very good. Lots more to come. Still so much more to come. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Browns fans, get ready for the NFL Draft. It is right here in town. It's this week. Special editions of Browns Live all week long, presented by Graham & Fist, Wine in a Can. Catch today's show in just minutes, just top of the hour, for the latest draft news, analysis, and interview with NFL Network host and Cleveland's own Chris Rose. Watch Browns Live on the Browns website, Browns YouTube channel, and the Browns mobile app with full replays of the show available at youtube.com/Browns. Browns. You have that to look forward to. Z, what else you got coming up on the program there besides Mr. Rose?
Well, we got Chris Rose. We got the latest news on the draft, and we've also got we're going to have a fun segment where I put out the call on Twitter for Browns draft questions, so we're going to get a lot of our great fan questions answered directly here on today's Browns Live. Yeah, and still coming this week, we're going to have Dan Sagany. We're going to have the great Jake Trotter, Dane Brugler. So we're going to be loaded up, and then you and I Thursday night together, reunited, and it feels so good. The draft special.
Reunited.
What hour.
Maybe I'll fix a transformative turkey for you and bring it in to the facility.
Wouldn't that be something?
Just bring that in for you. That'd be just absolutely wonderful if we could pull that off.
I'd be afraid of falling asleep.
That's very,
from the
very good.
Fan.
We're going to have to wait to pick, too. It'll take us a while. It's going to be strange for all of us. Yeah. All right. And coming up on tomorrow's show, we will have Dane Brugler from The Athletic. We'll have Kyle Krabs from the Draft Network. And I'm told an NFL Hall of Famer will be stopping by. Dante Lavelli will join us. No, I'm just kidding. The great Hudson native, Dante Lavelli, of course. God rest his soul. One of the all-time greats. Glue fingers. But a Hall of Famer. Gibby being vague. Could be anybody. The next level is coming up next.
Gold jacket.
We're back tomorrow.